E aí pessoal, bem-vindos ao canal Amigo Gringo, eu sou o Seth. Quero começar agradecendo vocês pelos comentários maravilhosos, emocionantes, importantes que vocês deixaram no vídeo da terça-feira, que chamava Sou Racista e Você. Para quem não viu, foi um vídeo que eu fiz refletindo sobre meu racismo pessoal. Achei importante falar do racismo nos Estados Unidos, pelo que está acontecendo agora com as manifestações contra a violência policial. E por isso hoje convidei o Kai Adderley para falar com a gente. Ele é uma pessoa que respeito muito, que conheço há muitos anos. Ele é um educador e consultor educacional. Ele atualmente é diretor de uma escola excelente em Filadélfia. Ele tem muita experiência e, mais importante ainda, ele morou no Brasil. E ele vai compartilhar com a gente a sua perspectiva sobre o racismo nos Estados Unidos, a violência da polícia nos Estados Unidos, as manifestações, mas também vai falar da experiência dele sendo negro, gringo, no Brasil. E aí, Kai, tudo bem?
E aí, tudo bem você?
Tudo bem aqui em Nova York. Você está onde agora? Você está morando em Filadélfia, é isso?
Em Filadélfia, minha casa de Filadélfia, my home.
Let's just speak English. Just take us through what you were doing in Brazil.
So yeah, I was running a KIPP charter school in Brooklyn, New York, and one of the features of the school was that kids had mandatory capoeira. As you know, I'm in love with Afro-Brazilian culture, so instead of going to PE, they did 90 minutes of capoeira every day. And we were in a very challenging neighborhood, and there were some Brazilians who were interested in discovering best practice from the U.S. in similar neighborhoods. So I came down to Rio de Janeiro, and my focus was education leadership. So I did a lot of training with the leaders in the education space in Rio and São Paulo who were running mostly public schools in Brazil.
We're here, of course, to talk about the events of the last, I don't know whether to say the last week or the last 3, 4, or 5 centuries.
3, 4, or 5 centuries probably hits it on the head. The last couple of weeks have been very intense. Currently, I'm working as the CEO of a K through 8 charter school in the Philadelphia area. So as all of us, we were going about our day-to-day, trying to make that day the best day we could, and tomorrow even better. And we started to learn about this global pandemic. I remember distinctly on March 12th, I called my leadership team together and we shut down the school and we said, look, we need a couple of days to get our teachers and our staff ready for what it looks like is coming our way. And over that weekend, the cases of the COVID-19 virus spiked so drastically and throughout the Northeast coast that the governors of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, all began shutting down our school system. So, and I'll bring this up probably over and over throughout the conversation, but the human side of all of this is that everybody felt fearful. Everybody was scared. No one knew what was happening.
So then after all this happened, of course, these cases start to bubble up as they unfortunately so often do, of police violence during the quarantine. How has this impacted you personally and professionally?
As you said, we're all at home, and I'm 45 years old. I grew up in the inner city. I've lived my life in Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Brooklyn, Rio de Janeiro. So violence and crime is something that comes with big cities, right? Something I'm very familiar with, being in the news and in the headlines of the news, and often someone that looks like me being part of that story. Again, growing up with 45 years of this, I know it's there. The difference now is you get to see it live happening. Right. You see it on your Twitter. You see it on your Instagram. And so now we're all stuck in the home. We're all feeling anxious anyway. And then this tragedy happens in Georgia. And when this happened, there was quickly a community of support that appeared on social media. People saw someone gunned down and reacted. And I think during this time, as we have been shut down and through this quarantine globally, we have been in a special time in our history where no matter where you live and no matter what your circumstances are, we are all able to feel empathy for each other because we all have similar fears right now.
Yeah.
So our empathetic selves were also on the table. And so when people saw this video, the reaction was, I think, really widespread and really deep felt.
Are you talking about across all of most of America? Or are you talking the African American community, or
it's all of America, right? This is the first time that I can remember in a long time in the history of my life that we were all focused on one issue, which was this coronavirus. Right. So everybody was glued to the TV anyway.
Yep.
So now people who don't typically watch the news or get involved in the social justice articles and stories, it was thrown in their face. Now it becomes a humankind issue, not just a black issue.
And then, of course, these other cases, the Central Park, I think people probably mostly know about this, but it's the woman who threatened the black man who was just trying to actually get her to put her dog on a leash and threatened to call the cops in a way that made it fairly clear she knew she was using his race as a part of a threat. The thing that got me about that one, there was no violence, thank God, but that woman reminded me of so many people I know. You know, that's a New York white woman and walking her dog in Central Park. What the hell is going on here?
My instant reaction was, well, there's nothing new there.
Right.
I've been dealing with this my entire life.
Right.
Everywhere I've been, that has been how I've been responded to, or people react to me in the United States, in Philadelphia, in New York, in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. Doesn't matter.
So it's cell phones? Is that what's changed everything?
You know, we now don't have to rely on what the media censors to show, because we are all now journalists. If you have an Instagram and a Snapchat and a Twitter, you know, we've armed the world with the power to share stories, which I think is really powerful.
For those of us who haven't lived this our whole lives, but have followed these kind of stories for a long time, I mean, it sounds maybe a little ignorant, but there's this moment of when all this stuff started coming out and you finally realize that, like, oh, it really has been happening this whole time. I mean,
well, what you're describing, I think that's what everybody started to feel.
Yeah.
I started getting letters from teachers that taught me when I was 10 years old, and friends and you know, individuals who don't consider themselves people of color or black people who just almost said what you just, you know, like, oh my gosh, like, I had no idea. Does this happen every day to you?
Yeah.
You know, and the answer is yes.
Well, let's talk just briefly about the Minneapolis incident. They're all hard to watch, but that cop, I mean, how can you explain that?
You think of the logo of, or the motto of our police force, right? To protect and serve. And so every time you see someone with a badge on who is committing an act of violence, you think to yourself, well, why did it have to go down that way? Because you already have all the power. You have the badge, you have the system, you have the stick, you have the gun. There had to be another way to solve this problem. We're all in a pandemic, we're all at home, we're all watching, the world is watching, and you see this man, this white man, kneeling on a black man's throat and watching him be murdered on television.
You know, there's a whole wide range of people in the United States who think about this thing in all kinds of different ways, and to a greater or lesser extent, people either give the benefit of the doubt to the officer and wait to hear the story, or they condemn them from day one, or there's just a whole range of reactions. But this particular one, it's impossible to see any other side of the story. Right there. People are screaming at him.
And his hands in his pockets and the smirk on his face, you know, really infuriated, like I said, not only black people, because every person that was watching this that, has any type of sensitivity to violence and killing was affected by this. And again, we're in a perfect storm. We're in a country, Brazil, very similar, where we have doubts about our president. We are questioning the leadership. We are in a global pandemic and we're scared and we have lost people and people have died and people have got sick and we've lost our jobs. And so you then turn on the television and you see, okay, hey, everybody played cops and robbers when you're a kid, right? The cop's the good guy. Well, the cop's not the good guy anymore, and it hasn't been for a long time in the black community.
I'll go to some of these questions that people sent in. Santiago Santos Bueno pergunta se existe algum processo educativo que ensine os alunos a interpretar corretamente o que é racismo e o que não é. Nem tudo é racismo. Será que o policial matou aquele homem por ser negro ou porque ele simplesmente é desgraçado?
You can see it, right? In some cases, you can absolutely just see it. There's a white man kneeling on a black man's throat until he dies. Yep, that's racism. In other cases where you might not see it as clearly, if you dig into the situation a bit, you start to realize that the system that we all operate within is rigged to punish the social behavior of black men more harshly than anyone else on the planet. So this guy had a $20 counterfeit bill. He was not.
I could have a $20 counterfeit bill. I'd not even know it.
And not even know it. Because he had this $20 counterfeit bill, either the store owner or whoever called the police or the woman in the park in Central Park or the people in the dog park in Lagoa who would scatter when I arrived, all had an image of what a black man with a big dog is. What a black man with a counterfeit $20 bill is. Not what they may do, what they are.
Wow, yeah.
He's a criminal. You don't have a big dog like that unless you fight dogs. Is that a pit bull? I mean, that every day. Pitch bully. I said, it's not a pit bull. Right? But the image has already been created there. So to answer that question, it's absolutely racism. It's absolutely that because it happened prior to the incident. The racism was already taught. And the system supports it.
In some of these cases, there's some gray area. Do you think that we prejudge these cases? And I guess, should we care that we're prejudging them? We prejudge black people all the time. Why don't we prejudge a white policeman who kills a black man?
We're all human. The police are here to protect and serve. There are many, and I would argue more, great cops than there are despicable bad cops that we've seen. They are absolutely owed the same right that all of us should be owed to due process and a fair hearing. And you would hope that a person who has a job, which is to uphold the law, would follow the law.
Right.
As a black man, you're not given that due process. You're not given that opportunity ever. So I think what we're seeing now is the shoe on the other foot now. Right. And folks are saying, you know what? I'm not giving you that benefit of the doubt anymore just because you have on a badge, because that badge to my people has always been a knee on the throat. What's going on now is people have a better sense of the problem. They're being able to almost touch it and feel it. When you go to a protest and there's 60-70% of the crowd are your allies, and that's why this time feels so intense right now, because it's not a black problem anymore. It doesn't feel like a black problem. It doesn't feel like just a black man problem. You spoke about the kids who were snatched out of a vehicle by police officers.
Oh, right.
Any mother on the earth, if their child was snatched like that by a police officer and tased, I don't care what color they are, how rich or poor they are, a mother, a family is going to have a big problem with how the police officer handled that situation.
So I do want to talk a little bit about the demonstrations here, and the thing that, of course, makes the news in Brazil more than anything else is the violence and riots.
These folks who are acting out in anger are also jobless. If you look at the unemployment numbers, they are historically high right now. Our people are hurting, and so when your people are hurting, who's going to hurt the most is going to be the people who are closer to the bottom of our economic system here. And so the looting, I think, came out of just the anger and a way to maybe get revenge or to get back at this system who has held you down for so long. I do think that the looting is not the way to protest.
Does it serve a purpose, though? I mean, at the end of the day, it certainly says, hey, everybody look over here, this is really serious.
It gets your attention really fast.
Someone had asked about black police officers, what you think when you see black police officers in some of this footage.
If you think about African-American culture and hip-hop, going back to some rap groups like NWA and KRS-One, BDP, they talked, I mean, there's a song called Black Cop, right? Black Cop, Black Cop, Black Cop.
Listen up. Black Cop, Black Cop, Black Cop, Black Cop.
And the Black Cop is actually worse than the experience that you will have with a white cop. Now, if you look at the data, you look at the statistics, black cops actually kill more black men than white cops do.
I didn't know that.
Part of the reason is, well, you have more black cops who are given assignments in black neighborhoods and areas. And on the other side of that, there's this connotation that, the police department is like a gang, right? There's a quote from a rap song. The police department is like a crew. It does whatever they want to do.
The police department is like a crew. It does whatever it wants to do.
Right? They take care of each other. So if you're a black cop, you show out. He says you show out for the white cop.
Black police showing out for the white cop. White police showing out for the black cop.
The hood lore, the lore in our communities is that the black police officers will be more harsh on you than any other race of police officer. And there's data absolutely to back it up, and there's a great book, Paul Butler, Chokehold.
Bom, espero que vocês tenham gostado. Tem muito, muito mais. Então, nos próximos dias, vou editar a segunda parte e fazer as legendas. Então, a gente se vê para Amigo Gringo Responde na sexta-feira e depois para a parte 2 desse vídeo.